While expecting, she was kicked out during a storm because of a lie his mother told. Her husband shouted, "Get out of this house! You are a sick wife!" 3 hours later, the police called in horror, and her husband turned pale when he realized what had really happened. Hi, my beautiful family. Welcome back to Mr. Peter Stories, your own family story channel. Heavenly God, today we bow our hearts before you with deep gratitude and trembling love. Please place your divine hands over every woman in this family. Cover her with honor, protect her dignity, and strengthen her spirit in ways no hardship can ever break. She carries the weight of homes, the silence of pain, the patience of love, and the courage no one sees. Yet she still rises every day with grace. Bless her body with health, her mind with peace, and her heart with comfort that reaches her in quiet moments when no one asks how she is. Lord, reward every woman for the tears she never showed, the sacrifices she never counted, and the love she gave without conditions. Let her never feel invisible, never feel weak, never feel alone. Surround her with respect in this world and mercy in every step she takes. May her prayers be answered before they leave her lips, and may her life be filled with warmth, safety, and deep, lasting joy. My beautiful family, this channel exists because of love, faith, and respect, especially for the women who stand as the backbone of every home and every story we tell here. Stay with me, feel this prayer, and let this space remain a place of honor, healing, and togetherness. If your heart is true, like the video. If your love is real, write, "I am with Mr. Peter." Let's start with love. The thunder started just as Judy Fraser-Reed finished folding the last of the tiny white onesies. 7 months pregnant, her back aching and her feet swollen, she stood in the nursery of their suburban home and felt something close to peace. The baby kicked hard against her ribs, and she smiled, pressing her hand to the spot. She'd spent the entire afternoon preparing this room, painting the walls a soft cream color, arranging stuffed animals on the shelf, hanging tiny clothes in the closet. Everything perfect, everything ready. "Your daddy is going to love you so much," she whispered to her belly, running her fingers over the smooth fabric of a miniature dress. "We both will. We're going to be so happy." The front door slammed downstairs with enough force to rattle the windows and send her heart jumping into her throat. Judy's smile disappeared instantly. That wasn't how Gianni usually came home. He always called out for her, always came up gently, always kissed her belly before kissing her lips. This was different. This was wrong. She moved toward the stairs, one hand on the railing, the other supporting her heavy stomach. Each step down felt heavier than the last, like her body knew something her mind hadn't caught up to yet. "Gianni? Honey, is everything okay?" No answer, just footsteps pounding up the stairs, fast and angry, taking them in aggressive bounds. Gianni appeared at the top of the landing, his face twisted into something she'd never seen before, not even in their worst arguments. His eyes were wild, red-rimmed like he'd been crying or shouting or both. Behind him came his mother, Lorraine Reed, dressed in an expensive navy suit, her silver hair perfectly styled, her expression cold and victorious like a general surveying a conquered battlefield. "Gianni, what's wrong?" Judy reached for him, confusion and fear flooding through her veins. "What happened? Did something happen at work?" He jerked away from her touch like she'd burned him, like her fingers carried poison. "Don't! Don't you dare touch me with those lying hands!" Judy's heart started hammering against her ribs, matching the frantic kicks of the baby inside her. "What are you talking about? What happened? Please, you're scaring me." Lorraine stepped forward, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor with military precision. She held a manila folder like a weapon, like evidence at a trial. "Show her, Gianni. Show her the proof of what she's done to this family." "Proof of what?" Judy looked between them, her mind racing through possibilities, coming up empty. Someone please tell me what's going on, please. Gianni threw the folder at her feet with such force that papers scattered across the hardwood floor like accusations. Official-looking documents with laboratory letterheads, complex charts with lines and percentages she didn't understand. But the words at the top were clear enough, damning enough: DNA paternity analysis. "Pick them up," Gianni said, his voice shaking with barely controlled fury. Every word precise, cold, measured. "Pick them up and explain to me how you got pregnant 3 weeks before our wedding. Explain to me whose baby you're really carrying." The room tilted, the walls seemed to close in. Judy grabbed the doorframe to steady herself, her legs suddenly weak. "What? Gianni, that's not... I don't understand what you're saying." "The DNA test doesn't lie, dear." Lorraine's voice was silk over steel, sweet and poisonous. "That baby you're carrying, it's not my son's child. I had a private lab analyze your ultrasound measurements. They confirmed conception occurred weeks before your wedding. You were already pregnant when you trapped him into marriage." "That's insane!" Judy's voice cracked, desperation clawing at her throat. "Gianni, you know that's not true. You know it. We waited until after the wedding. You insisted on that because of your family's values, remember? You said you wanted everything to be right, to be proper." But Gianni wasn't listening. His eyes were fixed on the papers at her feet, on the dates and numbers and scientific language that condemned her. His jaw was clenched so tight she could see the muscles jumping. "The lab confirmed it. Conception date puts it 3 weeks before we got married. 3 weeks, Judy. Who was he? Who did you sleep with and then lie to me about? Was it that guy from your work? That friend from college? How long have you been playing me for a fool?" Something flickered in his eyes then. Something that looked like doubt. Like the part of him that knew his mother had manipulated him before, had controlled every aspect of his life, had driven away every friend and girlfriend she didn't approve of. The part of him that looked at his wife's tear-stained face and thought, "She's telling the truth." But that doubt was terrifying, because believing Judy meant standing up to his mother, meant confronting her, meant being the bad son, and Gianni had spent 30 years avoiding that confrontation. So he pushed the doubt down, buried it, chose the easier path. Tears started streaming down Judy's face, hot and fast, blurring her vision. "There was no one. Gianni, please look at me. Look into my eyes. You know me. You know I would never do something like that. I love you. This is our baby, our child. I thought I knew you." His voice broke on the words, raw pain mixing with the anger. "I thought you were different from all the women my mother warned me about. But she was right. She said you were just after my money, that you weren't good enough for this family, that girls from your background always had ulterior motives. And I defended you. I fought with her for months, damaged my relationship with my own mother because I believed in you, because I thought you loved me." Lorraine placed a hand on her son's shoulder, her face arranged in a mask of false sympathy, theatrical concern. "I'm sorry you had to find out this way, darling, I truly am. But better now than after the bastard is born and you're legally responsible for another man's mistake." "Don't call my baby that." Judy stepped forward, protective fury overriding her fear, her hands instinctively cradling her belly. "Gianni, listen to me, please. I don't know what those papers say, but they're wrong. They have to be wrong. Someone made a mistake at the lab, or they mixed up samples or something. This is your baby, our baby. I have never been with anyone else. Not before you, not during our marriage, never." Outside, the storm that had been threatening all day finally broke with apocalyptic fury. Rain slammed against the windows like fists trying to break through. Thunder cracked so loud it shook the foundation of the house. Lightning split the darkening sky in jagged white scars. Gianni looked at his wife, at her tear-stained face, at her swollen belly carrying what he now believed was another man's child, at the life he thought they were building together, and something inside him snapped clean in half. Get out! Judy's breath caught in her chest. What? Get out of this house. His voice was ice now. All the warmth she'd fallen in love with burned away to frozen ash. You are a sick wife, a liar, a manipulator. I don't want to see you or that bastard child ever again. Johnny, please. Judy reached for him desperately, her hands shaking. It's storming outside. I'm 7 months pregnant. Please just let me explain. Let me take another test. Let me prove. He grabbed her wrist and dragged her toward the stairs, his grip firm and unyielding. Not hard enough to bruise, but hard enough to show he meant every word. Judy stumbled, trying to keep her balance with her heavy belly throwing off her center of gravity, her other hand gripping the railing to keep from falling. Johnny, stop! The baby! That's not my baby! He was shouting now, years of his mother's careful poison finally finding its mark, finally taking root. You lied to me. You used me. You trapped me with another man's child, and I was stupid enough, blind enough, fool enough to fall for it, to think you actually loved me. They were at the front door now, Johnny's hand on the knob. Rain was hammering against it like something alive and angry, trying to break through. The wind howled like a wounded animal. Judy could see lightning splitting the sky through the window beside the door, could see the streets already flooding with rushing water. Please, she begged, both hands on her stomach, feeling the baby kick in distress, feeling her own heart breaking into pieces. Please don't do this. I'm telling you the truth. I swear on my life, on my mother's grave, on everything I believe in, this baby is yours. Just let me stay until the storm passes. Then we can talk. We can go to a different lab. We can figure this out together. There's nothing to figure out. Johnny wrenched the door open. Wind and rain exploded into the house like a physical assault, soaking the hardwood floors, tearing at the curtains. The proof is right there in black and white. I want you gone. Now. Tonight. Forever. Johnny, I'm begging you. He pushed her, not violently but firmly, decisively, out into the storm. Judy stumbled down the front steps, her hands trying to catch herself, her clothes instantly soaked through. Rain blinded her. Wind tore at her hair. She turned back, reaching for the door with desperate hands, but it was already slamming shut in her face. The lock clicked with brutal finality. Gianni! She pounded on the door with both fists, screaming over the thunder and wind. Please, I'm pregnant. Please don't do this to us. Through the window beside the door, she could see him standing in the hallway, his mother's hand on his shoulder, both of them watching her like she was a stranger, a criminal, something to be disposed of. Then Lorraine reached over and closed the curtains with a sharp pull, cutting off even that last connection. Judy stood there in the rain, shaking from cold and shock and disbelief, one hand supporting her belly as the baby kicked frantically inside her, sensing her distress. Lightning illuminated the flooded street, the abandoned cars, the debris already flowing past. She had no phone, no wallet, no keys. Everything was inside the house, inside the home that was no longer hers. A contraction hit without warning, sharp and sudden and wrong. Too early, too strong, too painful. Judy gasped, doubling over on the front lawn as pain ripped through her abdomen. The baby was in distress. She needed help. She needed a hospital. She needed someone to believe her. She started walking, stumbling down the flooded street in the darkness. Rain pounded her like fists from heaven. Thunder drowned out her sobs. Another contraction hit, this one stronger, more insistent, and she fell to her knees in rising water that soaked through her clothes and chilled her to the bone. Help! She tried to scream, but the storm swallowed her voice like it had never existed. Somebody help me, please, my baby. Lightning flashed, turning the world white for one terrible second. Thunder answered like the sky was breaking apart, and Judy Fraser-Reed collapsed face down in the flood. The last thing she felt before darkness took her was her baby kicking weakly inside her dying body, fighting for a life that was slipping away with every second. 3 blocks away from the house where her husband had thrown her out to die. 3 blocks away from the man who chose his mother's lies over his wife's truth, 3 blocks away from everything she thought her life would be. Inside the Reed house, Gianni sat on the couch, the DNA papers scattered around him like fallen leaves. His hands were shaking. His mother brought him tea in his favorite mug, set it on the table with a satisfied smile. His phone rang. He stared at it, let it ring. It rang again, and again. Finally, on the 4th call, he answered. What? The voice on the other end was professional, urgent, controlled, but carrying an undercurrent of emergency. Mr. Reed, this is Officer Martinez with the City Police Department. We need you to come to City General Hospital immediately. Gianni's blood ran cold. His grip tightened on the phone. Why? What happened? Sir, your wife was found unconscious in the street during the storm. She's in critical condition. The baby may not survive. Sir, how quickly can you get here? The phone slipped from Gianni's hand, clattered to the floor. He looked down at the DNA papers, at his mother's satisfied face, at the locked front door where he'd pushed his pregnant wife out into a storm to die. His face drained of all color, all blood, all life. Oh God, he whispered, his voice breaking, what have I done? Chapter 2. The Awakening. The machines were the first thing Judy heard when consciousness dragged her back from the void. Steady beeping, the hiss of oxygen, voices murmuring somewhere far away. Everything hurt. Her body felt like it had been torn apart and badly reassembled. She tried to move, and pain exploded through her abdomen, sharp enough to make her gasp. She's waking up. A woman's voice, professional and gentle. Mrs. Reed, can you hear me? Don't try to move. You're in the hospital. You're safe now. Judy's eyes fluttered open. White ceiling tiles, fluorescent lights too bright. A nurse leaning over her, adjusting something on the IV pole. The smell of antiseptic and bleach. Hospital. She was in a hospital. Why was she in a hospital? Then memory crashed back like a second storm. The DNA papers, Gianni's rage, the door slamming, the rain, the pain, the darkness swallowing her whole. My baby. The words came out as a croak, her throat raw like she'd been screaming. Where's my baby? The nurse's face softened. Your daughter is in the neonatal intensive care unit. She's fighting hard. The doctors are doing everything they can. Daughter. She had a daughter. Judy tried to sit up, tubes and wires pulling at her arms. I need to see her. I need to see my baby. Not yet. The nurse pressed her gently back down. You've been unconscious for 4 days. Your body went through severe trauma, hypothermia, premature labor, internal bleeding. You almost died, Mrs. Reed. 4 days. She'd been gone from the world for 4 days. 4 days her baby had been fighting alone. 4 days since Gianni threw her into that storm. Where's my husband? The question came automatically, trained response from a life that no longer existed. Did he? Is he here? The nurse's expression changed. Something uncomfortable flickered across her face. She busied herself with checking the monitors, wouldn't meet Judy's eyes. Let me get your doctor. He'll explain everything. But Judy already knew. The silence told her everything. The way the nurse avoided her gaze told her everything. Gianni hadn't come. He'd thrown her out to die, and he hadn't even called to see if she survived. The doctor came, explained her injuries in clinical terms: ruptured membranes, emergency cesarean, massive blood loss. Her daughter, tiny and premature, fighting for every breath in the NICU. They'd named her baby girl Reed in the system since Judy had been unconscious. Can I name her? Judy's voice was hollow. Can I name my own daughter? Of course. The doctor squeezed her hand. What would you like to call her? Judy thought of the storm, of the darkness, of hitting the ground and thinking she'd never see light again. She thought of surviving what should have killed them both. Zara, her name is Zara. It meant princess in Arabic. blooming flower in Hebrew, light in Slavic languages, all the things Judy wanted her daughter to be, all the things Judy would make sure she became. Over the next few days, nurses wheeled Judy down to the NICU whenever her body could handle the journey. Zara was so small, barely the size of Judy's forearm, connected to more machines than seemed possible. But she was alive. She was breathing. She was here. And so was someone else. The man appeared in Judy's hospital room on the 5th morning, holding flowers. Sunflowers, bright and hopeful, completely incongruous with her situation. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with kind eyes and hands that looked like they'd built things, fixed things, created things. "You don't know me," he said, his voice quiet and careful, like he was trying not to startle a wounded animal. "My name is Ben Oliver. I'm the one who found you in the street during the storm." Judy stared at him. This stranger, this man who'd saved her life when her own husband left her to die. "You pulled me out of the water." "Yes." He set the flowers on the table, kept his distance, respectful of her space. "I was driving home from work, saw you fall, got you to the hospital as fast as I could. You saved my life." The words felt inadequate. "You saved my daughter's life." Ben's expression was unreadable. Anyone would have done the same thing. But that wasn't true. Judy's own husband hadn't done the same thing. Her own husband had pushed her into that storm and locked the door. "Have you?" She had to force the words out. "Has my husband been here? Has Gianni come to see me or the baby?" The silence that followed was more devastating than any answer could have been. "No," Ben finally said, his voice gentle but honest. "According to the nurses, he hasn't called, hasn't visited, hasn't asked about either of you." Something inside Judy shattered completely. Not her heart, that had already broken. Something deeper. Some fundamental belief about the world, about love, about the man she'd married. It crumbled to dust and blew away. "I see." Her voice was eerily calm, empty of emotion, because there was simply too much emotion to process. "Thank you for telling me the truth." Ben moved closer, his hands in his pockets, like he didn't know what to do with them. "I've been paying your medical bills. I hope that's okay. I know it's overstepping, but I couldn't leave you dealing with that on top of everything else." Judy looked at this man she'd never met before 5 days ago, this stranger who'd done more for her in less than a week than her husband had done in 3 years of marriage. "Why? Why what? Why are you doing this? You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. Why would you save me and then stay?" Ben was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice carried old grief, old guilt. "I lost my wife and daughter 6 years ago. Car accident. Drunk driver. I was supposed to be driving them that day, but I had a work emergency. My wife drove instead." He looked out the window at the city beyond. "I couldn't save them. But I could save you. And once I'd saved you, I couldn't just walk away and leave you alone. Not when you needed someone." Judy felt tears sliding down her face. Not for herself this time, but for this broken man trying to fix his past by saving strangers in storms. "I'm so sorry." "Don't be." He turned back to her, and his eyes held a quiet strength she'd never seen in Gianni's, even in their best moments. "You survived something that would have killed most people. You're stronger than you know." "I don't feel strong." Judy wiped her eyes with shaking hands. "I feel destroyed. Destroyed things can be rebuilt." Ben's voice was certain, like he knew this from experience. "Stronger than before. Better than before. You'll see." Later that night, after Ben had left, after the nurses had done their rounds, after the hospital had settled into its nighttime rhythm, Judy lay in her bed and stared at the ceiling. She thought about Gianni sleeping peacefully in their house. She thought about Lorraine's satisfied smile, She thought about the DNA papers that were lies, all lies, but had cost her everything anyway. And she thought about her daughter fighting for her life 3 floors down, this tiny warrior who'd survived a storm and refused to give up. Judy placed both hands on her empty, aching belly, where Zara had been growing just days ago. She spoke quietly, a promise to the darkness, to the machines, to the child who couldn't hear her, but would know this truth eventually. Your father threw us away like garbage. He chose lies over truth, his mother over his wife, cruelty over compassion. But we survived. We're still here. And I swear on everything I have left, we will rise from this. We will become so strong, so successful, so powerful, that he will spend the rest of his life knowing what he destroyed. We will be queens, baby girl. Queens who bowed to no one and needed no one. Do you hear me? We will be queens. The machines beeped their steady rhythm. The hospital hummed its nighttime song. And somewhere in the NICU, Zara kicked her tiny feet and kept breathing, kept fighting, kept surviving, because that's what queens do. Chapter 3. The Guest House. 3 weeks later, Judy stood in the hospital parking lot holding Zara in her arms and had nowhere to go. The doctors had finally cleared them both for discharge. Zara was still fragile, still needed careful monitoring, but she was strong enough to leave. They'd survived the hardest part. Now came everything else. "Do you have someone to pick you up?" the discharge nurse had asked, clipboard in hand, going through the final paperwork. Judy had lied, said yes, said someone was coming. The nurse had smiled and wished her luck and left her there with a folder full of instructions for caring for a premature infant and absolutely no plan for what came next. She had no house. Gianni had changed the locks. Her name wasn't on the lease. She'd checked the bank account from a borrowed phone and found it empty, closed, her access revoked. She had no car, no money, no family. Her parents were dead. Her friends had all been Gianni's friends first. She had nothing except the hospital gown she was still wearing under a donated jacket and the tiny, fragile daughter in her arms. "We'll figure it out," she whispered to Zara, who was sleeping peacefully, unaware that her mother was one step away from being homeless. "Somehow, we'll figure it out." "You're not figuring anything out today." Ben's voice came from behind her. She turned to find him walking across the parking lot, keys in hand. "You're coming with me." Judy shook her head automatically. "Ben, I can't ask you to." "You're not asking. I'm offering. I have a guest house on my property. 2 bedrooms, full kitchen, completely separate from the main house. You'll have privacy, security, everything you need." He stopped a few feet away, giving her space. "Zara needs a safe place to recover. You need time to figure out your next steps. Let me help." "Why?" Judy's voice cracked. "Why do you keep helping me? You've already done so much. The hospital bills, the flowers, staying with me. You don't owe me anything. You don't even know me." Ben looked at the baby in her arms, at this tiny life that had fought so hard to stay in the world. "Because nobody should go through what you're going through alone. Because I have the means to help, and it would be wrong not to. Because—" He stopped, seemed to struggle with words. "Because walking away from you and Zara would feel like walking away from them all over again. My wife and daughter. And I can't do that. I won't do that." Judy felt something shift in her chest. Not love. Not yet. But something just as powerful. Recognition. Of one broken person seeing another broken person and choosing to share the burden instead of adding to it. "Okay. Okay?" "Yes." She adjusted Zara in her arms, feeling the weight of her daughter, the weight of this decision, the weight of starting over with nothing but the charity of a stranger. "Okay. Thank you. But this is temporary. Just until I can figure things out. I'll pay you back. Every penny of the hospital bills, the rent, everything, I promise." Ben's smile was small but genuine. I'm not worried about that. Come on, let's get you both home. The drive to Ben's property took them out of the city, into an area where houses sat on acres of land instead of cramped lots. Ben's estate was beautiful, all rolling green lawns and mature trees, a long driveway leading to a massive main house that looked like something from a magazine. But he drove past it, around to the back where a smaller house sat nestled among oak trees, private and peaceful. Here we are. He parked, came around to help her out of the truck. I had my sister stock the fridge and the baby supplies. If you need anything else, just let me know. The guest house was more than Judy could have imagined. Hardwood floors, high ceilings, large windows, letting in natural light. The furniture was comfortable, but not ostentatious. One bedroom had been set up as a nursery, complete with a crib, changing table, rocking chair, everything Judy had lost when Gianni threw her out. Ben, this is too much. Judy walked through the rooms, Zara still asleep in her arms. This is too generous. I can't accept this. You already did. He stood in the doorway, hands in his pockets, that quiet strength radiating from him. Listen, I know you don't like taking charity. I get that. But right now you need help. Accepting help isn't weakness. It's survival. And Zara needs you to survive. He was right. Judy looked down at her daughter's tiny face, at the delicate features and rosebud mouth. Zara needed her strong, capable, focused. Zara needed her alive. Pride was a luxury she couldn't afford. Thank you. The words felt inadequate for what he was giving her. Truly, thank you. You're welcome. Ben moved toward the door. I'll let you settle in. I'm in the main house if you need anything. Anytime, day or night. My number's on the fridge. After he left, Judy spent an hour just walking through the guest house, touching the furniture, checking the cabinets. Everything she could possibly need was there. Dishes, towels, food, baby supplies. Someone had thought of everything. Ben's sister, he'd said. A woman Judy had never met had spent time preparing this space for a stranger. She put Zara down in the crib, watched her daughter sleep for a long time. The baby was so small, so fragile, but already Judy could see strength in her, the way her little fists clenched, the determined set of her mouth even in sleep. She was a fighter. We're going to be okay, Judy whispered, stroking Zara's soft hair. I don't know how yet, but we're going to be okay. That night, after feeding Zara and getting her back to sleep, Judy stood at the window of the guest house and looked across the lawn at Ben's main house. The lights were on in what looked like the kitchen. She could see his silhouette moving around, alone in that massive space. On impulse, she walked over to the main house, knocked softly on the back door. Ben answered, surprise crossing his face. Is everything okay? Does Zara need something? No, everything's fine. Judy wrapped her arms around herself against the cool night air. I wanted to thank you properly, face to face. What you're doing for us, it's more than kindness. It's giving us a chance to survive, to rebuild. I won't forget that. Ben leaned against the doorframe, and for the first time since she'd met him, he looked tired, bone-deep tired, like he'd been carrying weight for a very long time. Can I tell you something? Of course. When I lost my wife and daughter, I lost myself too. I kept working, kept building my company, kept going through the motions, but inside I was empty. I blame myself for not being there, for letting them drive without me that day. I've spent 6 years punishing myself. He looked past her, at the guest house, at the life he was helping her rebuild. Helping you? Helping Zara? It's the first time in 6 years that I've felt like maybe I'm not completely useless, like maybe I can still do some good in this world. Judy felt tears sting her eyes. You're not useless. You're the opposite of useless. You're the reason we're alive. And you're the reason I remember why being alive matters. His voice was quiet, honest. So thank you too. They stood there in the doorway for a long moment, two broken people holding each other up with words and presence, and shared understanding of what it meant to lose everything and somehow keep breathing. Finally, Judy stepped back. "Good night, Ben." "Good night, Judy." She walked back to the guest house, back to her sleeping daughter, back to the life she was going to build from absolute zero. Through the window, she saw Ben's silhouette in his kitchen, and she noticed something she hadn't before. He sat down at the table and picked up a framed photograph, held it gently like it was made of glass. His wife and daughter, the family he'd lost, the grief he carried. Judy turned away, giving him privacy for his pain. She understood now. Ben wasn't saving her. They were saving each other. The next morning she woke to find grocery bags on her doorstep. Fresh fruit, vegetables, coffee, all the things new mothers need. No note, no fanfare, just quiet care from a man who understood that sometimes the best help is the kind that doesn't ask for acknowledgement. Judy brought the bags inside, fed Zara, and made herself coffee. Then she sat at the kitchen table with a notebook and pen and started making a plan. She had no money, no job, no prospects, but she had time, she had determination. She had a daughter who needed her to be strong, and she had a stranger who'd become something more than a stranger, who'd given her the gift of space to heal and time to plan and safety to dream. It was more than enough to start with. It was everything. Chapter 4. Rising from ashes. 6 months crawled by in the guest house, each day blending into the next with the rhythm of new motherhood. Zara grew stronger, her tiny lungs finally catching up to where they should be. She smiled now, laughed, reached for things with chubby hands. Judy watched her daughter transform from a fragile preemie into a thriving baby and felt something she'd thought was dead begin to stir inside her. Hope. But hope didn't pay bills. Hope didn't build futures. Judy needed something more concrete than hope. She'd spent Zara's nap times researching, planning, teaching herself. YouTube became her university. She learned about jewelry making, about design, about the intersection of art and commerce. Her mother had made jewelry as a hobby, back before the cancer took her. Judy remembered watching her work, the way silver could be coaxed into beautiful shapes, the way stones could catch light and hold it. She started with wire and cheap beads from a craft store. Ben had slipped her cash one morning, left it on the doorstep with the groceries. No note, no expectation of repayment, just quiet generosity. Judy had tried to refuse, but Ben had already gone to work, so she used it to buy tools and materials and possibility. Her first pieces were rough, amateur, exactly what you'd expect from someone learning a craft from internet videos, but she kept practicing, kept improving. And slowly, something began to emerge. A style, a voice. Her jewelry wasn't delicate and pretty like her mother's had been. It was bold, fierce, sharp-edged. Broken chains reformed into crowns, storm clouds rendered in oxidized silver, phoenix designs rising from scattered stones, jewelry for women who'd survived something, for women who'd been broken and rebuilt themselves stronger. She named her brand Fraser Luxe, her maiden name, her new identity, no trace of Reed left in her. Ben noticed her work one morning when he stopped by with coffee. He'd made it a habit, bringing her coffee every few days, staying for a few minutes to check on them, never intrusive, never demanding, just present. "These are incredible," he said, picking up one of her necklaces, a silver piece with a cracked gemstone at the center, the cracks filled with gold. "This is real art." Judy felt heat rise to her face. "They're just practice pieces. I'm still learning." "These are better than practice." Ben turned the necklace over in his hands, studying it with the eye of someone who understood craftsmanship. "Do you have a website? Are you selling these?" "Not yet. I was going to set something up eventually, but I need more inventory first, and better photos and—" "Let me help." Ben set the necklace down carefully. "I know people. Corporate wives who are always looking for unique pieces. Let me show them your work. No pressure, just some initial interest. Judy wanted to refuse, wanted to prove she could do this herself, but pride was still a luxury she couldn't afford. And Zara needed diapers and formula and a mother who could provide. Okay, thank you. Within a week, Ben had shown her pieces to 3 of his business associates' wives. Within 2 weeks, she had her first order. A custom necklace for a CEO's wife, willing to pay more than Judy made in a month at her old retail job. She worked on that piece like her life depended on it, because it did. She sketched designs for days before settling on the right one. A serpent coiled around a sword, delicate and deadly at once. She worked while Zara napped, while Zara played, sometimes through the night when insomnia and anxiety wouldn't let her sleep anyway. When she delivered the finished piece, the woman's face lit up. "This is extraordinary. Do you have a card? I need to tell everyone about you." Judy didn't have cards, didn't have a website, didn't have any of the things a real business needed. But she had Instagram, and she had a phone, and that night she posted her first photo. The serpent necklace against black velvet, lit dramatically, captioned simply, "Fraser Lux, for the women who refuse to break." The CEO's wife shared it, tagged her friends, and suddenly Judy's phone was exploding with messages, orders, questions, interest, real tangible interest in her work. The orders came in faster than she could fill them. She worked until her fingers bled, until her eyes burned, until Zara cried for attention, and Judy had to force herself to stop and be a mother instead of a desperate woman trying to build an empire from wire and stones. Ben found her one night at 2 in the morning, sitting on the guest house porch, crying from exhaustion and stress, and the overwhelming feeling of being so close to something, but not quite able to reach it. "Hey." He sat down beside her, didn't touch her, just offered presence. "What's wrong?" "I have 50 orders." Judy wiped her eyes angrily. 50 people want my jewelry, and I can't fill them fast enough. I'm one person with a baby and a broken life, and I can't keep up, and I'm going to fail and disappoint everyone, and—" "Stop!" Ben's voice was gentle but firm. "You're not going to fail. You're going to hire help. You're going to expand. You're going to build this business properly." "With what money?" Judy laughed bitterly. "I'm barely scraping by as it is." "With my investment." Ben pulled out a check, already written, already signed. "Consider this a business loan. 0 interest. Pay me back when you can. Use it to hire an assistant, buy better equipment, rent a proper workspace, build Fraser Lux into what it deserves to be." Judy stared at the check. The amount made her dizzy. "Ben, I can't accept this. It's too much. You've already done too much." "I'm not giving you charity. I'm investing in a business I believe in a woman I believe in." He pressed the check into her hand. "You're going to pay me back with interest, even though I don't want it, because you're going to be successful. I can see it." That night, Judy laid awake staring at the check, thinking about Ben's quiet faith in her, thinking about the orders piling up, thinking about the woman she used to be and the woman she was becoming. In the morning, she deposited the check, hired 2 artisans to help with production, bought professional equipment, rented a small studio space downtown. Fraser Lux stopped being a dream and started being real. And then the divorce papers arrived. The courier came on a Tuesday morning, handed her the envelope with bored efficiency. Judy signed for it with Zara on her hip, opened it standing in the doorway. Legal language. Dissolution of marriage. Abandonment cited as cause. Infidelity cited as cause. All lies, all poison Gianni had swallowed, and now was spitting back at her through lawyers. She should have felt something. Anger, grief, something. But all she felt was cold relief. This was the final cut, the final severance from the man who'd thrown her into a storm. She signed the papers that afternoon, didn't read them carefully, Didn't fight for anything, didn't want anything from him except distance, just signed her name in all the required places and put them in the return envelope. Before she sealed it, she took one of her necklaces, the first one she'd ever made, rough and imperfect, a broken chain reformed into a crown. She wrapped it in tissue paper and tucked it in with the divorce papers. No note, no message, just the jewelry. A crown for the queen he'd thrown away. Ben found her that evening sitting on the porch, the signed papers beside her, staring at nothing. "You okay?" He sat down, his presence steady and calm. He filed for divorce, cited abandonment and infidelity, all lies. But he believes them, or wants to believe them. I don't know which is worse. I'm sorry. I'm not. Judy picked up the envelope. This is freedom. This is the door closing on that life. I don't want anything from him. Not his name, not his money, not his apologies. I just want him gone. She walked to the mailbox at the end of the driveway, Ben following silently. She put the envelope in, raised the flag. Done. Finished. Over. I used to think love meant something, she said quietly, watching the envelope sitting there waiting for pickup. I used to think marriage was sacred, that vows mattered, that when someone said they loved you, they meant through everything, through doubts and storms and lies told by bitter mothers. But I was wrong. You weren't wrong. Ben's voice was certain. He was wrong. The right person would have believed you, would have questioned his mother, would have chosen you. Judy turned to look at him. This man who'd chosen her every single day for months without asking anything in return. Why didn't you ever get remarried, after your wife? Because I couldn't find anyone I wanted to protect more than I wanted to protect myself. He met her eyes. Until now. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning, neither of them was ready to fully acknowledge. Judy looked away first. I should get back. Zara will be waking up soon. Judy, thank you, Ben, for everything, for being here, for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself, her voice caught, for being what he should have been. She walked back to the guest house before he could respond, before the moment could become something more complicated than either of them could handle. But that night, lying in bed with Zara sleeping peacefully in her crib, Judy let herself think about Ben's words. Until now. Until her. She pressed her hands over her face and told herself firmly that she couldn't afford to think about that, couldn't afford to feel anything for anyone. She had a business to build, a daughter to raise, a life to construct from rubble. Love was a luxury she'd already paid for once. She wouldn't make that mistake again. But as she drifted off to sleep, her last thought was of Ben's eyes when he said those words, the way he looked at her like she was something precious instead of something broken. And despite everything, despite all her promises to herself, she felt something warm unfurl in her chest, something that felt dangerously like hope, the kind of hope that could destroy you if you weren't careful, the kind that could save you if you were brave enough to let it. Chapter 5. The Billboard. 18 months after the storm, Judy Fraser stood in downtown traffic and stared up at her own face, looming 40 feet tall above the street. The photographer had captured her in profile, chin raised, eyes fierce, one of her crown necklaces catching light around her throat. Bold white text proclaimed, Fraser Lux, forged in fire, built to last. Her business had exploded beyond anything she could have imagined. What started as wire and cheap stones in Ben's guest house had become a multi-million-dollar brand. Celebrities wore her pieces on red carpets. Fashion magazines featured her designs. She'd opened 3 boutiques, hired a full staff, moved production to a real facility, and now there was a billboard, her face, her success, her middle finger to everyone who'd ever counted her out. She took a photo on her phone, sent it to Ben with the caption, "Made it, boss." He responded immediately with a string of celebration emojis, and "I knew you would." She was still living in his guest house, had been for the entire 18 months. She'd offered to move out a dozen times, but Ben always found reasons why she should stay. The guest house was going unused anyway. Zara loved the space to run around. The commute to the city would be hell from anywhere else. All valid reasons, all excuses for them both. Because the truth was, neither of them wanted her to leave. They'd fallen into a rhythm, a partnership that wasn't quite friendship and wasn't quite family, but was something precious and comfortable and good. Ben still brought coffee some mornings. Judy cooked dinner some evenings. They watched Zara grow together, celebrating her milestones like co-parents who weren't actually parents at all. It was enough. It had to be enough. Judy told herself that every night. That morning, Johnny Reed sat in traffic 3 cars behind where Judy had been standing. He was heading to a client meeting, his mind on contracts and deals and the business that had consumed his life since the divorce. The divorce he'd pushed through without ever speaking to Judy again, without ever seeing his daughter, without ever questioning whether his mother might have lied. He glanced up at the billboard to distract himself from traffic, and his breath stopped in his chest. That face. He knew that face. The shape of her jaw, the curve of her neck, the way she held herself like she was daring the world to come at her. But it couldn't be. It couldn't be Judy. Judy had disappeared. Judy had taken the divorce money and vanished. His mother had assured him of that. Said she'd probably gone back to wherever she came from, said good riddance to trash. But that was her face. Older, harder, infinitely more powerful than the soft woman he'd married, but undeniably her. Gianni's hands started shaking on the steering wheel. The car behind him honked. He jerked forward, pulled into a parking lot, sat there staring at that billboard until his eyes burned. Fraser Lux. That was her maiden name. She'd built a business, a successful business, successful enough for downtown billboards. She wasn't broken, wasn't destroyed, wasn't any of the things he'd assumed she would be. She'd survived, without him, despite him, in defiance of him. Something cracked inside Gianni's chest, something he'd been keeping locked for 18 months. That doubt from the night of the storm, the doubt he'd felt when he looked at Judy's face and known deep down that she was telling the truth, that his mother was lying. He'd pushed it down then, chosen the easier path, avoided the confrontation with his mother that terrified him more than anything. But now, staring at Judy's success, at the empire she'd built without him, that doubt roared back with devastating force. He drove to his mother's house instead of his meeting, burst through the door without knocking. Lorraine was in her sitting room, declining slowly, her health failing, though doctors couldn't say why. Guilt, Gianni sometimes thought, though she'd never admit it. "Did you know?" His voice shook. "Did you know she was successful? That she built a company?" Lorraine's face went pale. "What are you talking about?" "Judy! There's a billboard downtown. She's thriving, and I need to know." He moved closer, something dangerous in his eyes. "Was the test real? Did you really find an independent lab? Or did you pay someone to lie? Johnny, please, tell me the truth." The shout echoed through the house. "I threw my pregnant wife into a storm. I need to know if you lied." Lorraine's composure crumbled. "I was protecting you." The words hit like a physical blow. "What?" "She wasn't good enough. No connections, no family, no money. I found a lab technician who needed cash. He manipulated the ultrasound measurements, made conception look earlier than it was." Her voice was barely a whisper. "I thought I was saving you from a mistake." Gianni's world imploded. "You made me believe my wife cheated. You made me throw her out. She could have died. The baby could have died. But they didn't. They survived. And look, she's successful. You destroyed my family." Johnny's voice went cold. "And I let you, because I was too much of a coward to stand up to you. Because some part of me knew you were lying and I ignored it. Because avoiding confrontation with you was easier than believing in my wife." He turned to leave. "Where are you going?" Lorraine's voice was terrified. "To find my daughter, to see if there's any way to fix what we destroyed." He looked back once. "And Mother, I'm done. With you, with letting you control my life. I should have stood up to you years ago, but I didn't, and that cowardice is mine to carry. I'm dying." Her voice cracked. "The doctors say 6 months. You can't leave me now. You were my mother, but you stopped being family when you destroyed mine." He walked out, sat in his car outside her house and broke completely. Not for his mother, but for Judy, for Zara, for the life he'd destroyed because he'd been too weak to choose courage over comfort. He'd spent his whole life being a coward, and in the one moment when courage mattered most, he'd failed. Now he had to face what that cowardice had cost him. He hired a private investigator. Within days, he had a report. Judy lived at Oakmont Estate in Ben Oliver's guest house. His daughter was 2 years old, and another man was raising her. Gianni stared at the surveillance photos until they blurred. That was his daughter. That little girl with Judy's smile. That was Zara. And there was Ben Oliver, standing where Gianni should be standing. He'd lost everything, and he'd given it all to another man. Tomorrow, he decided. Tomorrow, he'd face what he'd done, face his own cowardice, finally take responsibility, even if it was 18 months too late. Chapter 6. The fortress. Gianni pulled up to the iron gates of Oakmont Estate at 9 in the morning, his hands slick with sweat on the steering wheel. The investigator's photos hadn't prepared him for the scale of this place. Rolling lawns, mature trees, the kind of property that screamed old money and quiet power, the kind of place Gianni's mother had always dreamed their family would have. And Judy lived here. His ex-wife, the woman he'd thrown into a storm, lived in a guest house on grounds more impressive than any place he'd ever lived. A security guard approached his car, professional but wary. "Can I help you, sir? I'm here to see Judy Fraser. I'm Gianni Reed. I'm her—" He stopped. What was he? Ex-husband felt like an accusation. The man who destroyed her felt too honest. "I'm her daughter's father." The guard's expression didn't change. "One moment, please." He spoke into his radio, voice low. A pause. Then, "I'm sorry, sir. Miss Fraser doesn't have you listed as approved visitors. You'll need to leave the property. Please, just tell her I'm here. Tell her I need to talk to her. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking." Desperation made Gianni's voice crack. "Tell her I know the truth about the DNA test. Tell her I know my mother lied. Please." Another radio conversation. Longer this time. Gianni's heart hammered so hard he thought it might explode. Finally, the guard returned. "Sir, Ms. Fraser has asked me to inform you that she has nothing to say to you. She's requested that you leave the property immediately and not return. But I need to see my daughter. I have rights, sir." The guard's voice went hard. "You have no rights here. You need to leave, now. If you return, we'll call the police." Through the gates, Gianni could see the guest house. A small figure appeared in one of the windows. Judy. She stood there looking at him, her face completely blank. No anger, no tears, no emotion at all. Just empty, cold assessment. Like he was a stranger, less than a stranger. Like he was nothing. "Judy!" Gianni got out of the car, moved toward the gate. The guard blocked him. "Judy, please, I was lied to. I didn't know. Please, let me explain." She didn't react, just stood there watching him fall apart at her gates. Then, with deliberate slowness, she reached up and closed the curtains. Shut him out like closing a book she'd already read and had no interest in finishing. That gesture, more than anything else, destroyed him. The absolute dismissal, the complete absence of caring. He wasn't even worth her anger anymore. The guard's hand was on his arm now, firm and unyielding. "Sir, you need to go. Don't make this harder than it has to be." Johnny got back in his car, his whole body shaking. As he turned around to leave, he saw another figure emerge from the main house. A tall man, broad-shouldered, moving with quiet confidence toward the guest house. Ben Oliver, the man from the photographs. Ben didn't even glance at Johnny's car, just walked straight to Judy's door, was let inside immediately. Through the window, Johnny saw him crouch down, saw a small child run to him, saw Ben lift her up with easy familiarity, saw his daughter hug this stranger with pure, uncomplicated love. Johnny drove away with tears streaming down his face. Over the next week, he tried everything. He sent letters, 50 of them. All returned unopened, returned to sender, stamped in red ink. He sent flowers every day. The florist finally called and said she'd been instructed to stop accepting orders for that address. He sent gifts for Zara, toys, books, a massive dollhouse, all returned without even being opened. He showed up at the gates 3 more times. Each time, security turned him away faster. The last time, they threatened to get a restraining order. He tried calling. Her number was disconnected. He tried emailing. The emails bounced back. She'd erased him from her life so completely it was like he'd never existed. Finally, in desperation, he went to her boutique downtown, waited outside until he saw her through the window, talking to staff, holding fabric samples, every inch the successful businesswoman. He walked in, and the moment she saw him, her expression went arctic. "Get out." "Judy, please, I just need to talk to you." "I said get out." Her voice was loud enough that staff and customers turned to look. "You are not welcome here. You are not welcome anywhere near me. I know what my mother did. I know the DNA test was fake. I know I was lied to." The words tumbled out of Johnny in a desperate rush. "I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm not asking for anything except a chance to apologize. To explain." "Explain what?" Judy's voice could have cut glass. "Explain that you believed the worst of me without a single question. Explain that you threw your pregnant wife into a storm and locked the door. Explain that you never called the hospital, never checked if we lived or died, never even asked if your daughter survived. I thought she wasn't mine. I thought you'd betrayed me. And I told you I hadn't. I begged you to believe me. I was standing in the rain, 7 months pregnant, bleeding and dying, and you locked the door." Her voice broke on the last word. The entire boutique had gone silent. "You chose your mother over me. You chose lies over truth. You chose cruelty over love. Those were your choices, Gianni, not hers. Yours." I know, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Gianni felt tears streaming down his face, didn't care who saw. Please let me meet my daughter. Let me try to make this right." "Your daughter?" Judy laughed, and the sound was bitter as poison. "You have no daughter. You threw her away before she was born. Ben Oliver has spent 2 years being her father, feeding her, playing with her, reading to her every night. He's the one she calls for when she's scared. He's the one she trusts. You're just the man whose DNA she shares. That doesn't make you her father. I want to fix this. I want to be in her life. Then you should have wanted that 2 years ago when it mattered." Judy turned away from him, spoke to her manager. "Call security. Get him out of my store." "Judy, please." 2 security guards appeared, large men with no-nonsense expressions. They took Gianni's arms, walked him toward the door. He didn't fight. What was the point? At the door, he turned back one last time. "I loved you. I know you don't believe that now, but I did love you, and I destroyed it. I destroyed us. And I have to live with that for the rest of my life." Judy met his eyes across the boutique. Her voice, when she spoke, was quiet enough that only he could hear. "Good. I hope it destroys you the way you tried to destroy me. The difference is, I survived. I rose. I became something powerful. And you? You'll spend the rest of your life knowing you had everything and threw it away because you were too weak to believe in the woman you claimed to love." The guards pushed him out onto the sidewalk. Through the boutique window, Gianni watched Judy turn back to her staff, her customers, her empire. Watched her compose herself and move on like he'd never been there at all. He sat in his car for an hour, shaking. Then he called his lawyer. "I want to file for custody of my daughter." The lawyer sighed. "Mr. Reed, we've been through this. You abandoned them. Filed for divorce, citing infidelity. Never attempted contact. Never paid child support. You have no grounds. The infidelity was a lie. My mother faked the DNA test. I have proof." "That may be true, but it doesn't change the fact that you abandoned them for 2 years. No judge is going to look favorably on that. I have rights as the biological father." "Technically, yes. But Mr. Reed, I strongly advise against this. You'll look terrible. A man who threw out his pregnant wife and then suddenly wants custody after she becomes successful. It's not a good look." "I don't care how I look." Gianni's voice was steel. "I want to see my daughter. If the only way to do that is through the courts, then that's what we'll do." The lawyer was silent for a long moment. "All right, but don't say I didn't warn you. This is going to get ugly." Gianni hung up and stared at the boutique, at the women going in and out with Fraser Luxe shopping bags, at the poster in the window showing Judy wearing one of her crown necklaces, fierce and beautiful and utterly untouchable. He'd made her this way. He'd thrown her into the fire, and she'd been forged into steel, into something stronger than he could ever touch or hurt again. And now, all he could do was batter himself against the fortress she'd built and hope that somewhere deep down there was still a crack he could slip through, still a chance for redemption. But looking at her face in that poster, at the absolute certainty in her eyes, Gianni knew the truth. Some fortresses were built to keep people out forever, and he'd built this one himself, brick by brick, with his own cruel hands. Chapter 7. The Silent Devotion. 1 year later, Zara Fraser turned 3 years old. Judy threw her a party in the backyard of the guest house, complete with a bouncy castle, face painting, and a princess cake 3 tiers high. 20 children from Zara's preschool ran screaming through the yard, while their parents watched from chairs under the oak trees, sipping wine and making small talk. Ben stood at the grill, flipping burgers with the ease of someone who'd done this before, who'd practiced fatherhood with his own daughter before tragedy took her away. Zara clung to his leg, her face painted like a butterfly, shouting instructions. "Uncle Ben, make mine with no tomatoes." "I know, Princess, I remember." He ruffled her dark curls. "No tomatoes, extra pickles, cut into triangles." "You're the bestest." Zara hugged his leg tighter, then ran off to join her friends. Judy watched from the porch, her heart doing something complicated in her chest. Over the past 3 years, she'd watched Ben become the father Zara needed without ever asking for the title. He'd taught her to tie her shoes, to ride her little tricycle, to be brave when the dark seemed scary. He'd been there for every milestone, every achievement, every tearful night when Zara had a nightmare. He'd been there for Judy, too, through panic attacks when the anniversary of the storm rolled around, through the stress of building Fraser Luxe, through the dark days when she wondered if she'd ever feel whole again. He'd been there with quiet strength and coffee and the kind of support that asked nothing in return. And somewhere along the way, without either of them acknowledging it, they'd become a family. Not a traditional family. They still lived in separate houses. They'd never so much as kissed, but they were together in all the ways that mattered. Partners, co-parents in everything but name. 2 broken people who'd found a way to be less broken together. Ben's sister Maya appeared beside Judy, wine glass in hand. "You're staring at him again." "I'm not staring." "You're absolutely staring. And he's been staring at you all morning. You two are ridiculous." Maya took a sip of wine. "Just tell him how you feel already. Put the poor man out of his misery." "I don't feel anything." The lie tasted bitter. "We're friends, roommates, co-parents." "You're in love with him." Maya's voice was matter-of-fact. "You've been in love with him for at least a year." And he's been in love with you since he pulled you out of that flood. But you're both too damaged and too scared to do anything about it. Judy's throat went tight. I can't. Maya, I can't risk it. What if it doesn't work? What if we try and it ruins everything? Zara needs stability. She needs Ben. I can't risk losing him. So instead you'll live in this weird limbo forever, never moving forward, never taking the risk? Maya shook her head. That's not living, Judy. That's just surviving. And you've been surviving long enough. Don't you want to actually live? Before Judy could answer, Zara came running over, face sticky with frosting. Mama, Uncle Ben says we can go to Paris. Is that real? Are we really going? Judy crouched down, wiping frosting from Zara's cheek. We're going for business, baby. Mama has meetings there. But yes, we can see the Eiffel Tower and eat lots of pastries. And Uncle Ben's coming? Zara's eyes were wide with excitement. Yes, Uncle Ben's coming. Good. I don't like when Uncle Ben isn't there. It doesn't feel right. Zara threw her arms around Judy's neck. We're all supposed to be together. That's how families work. Out of the mouths of babes, Judy hugged her daughter tight, looked over Zara's shoulder to find Ben watching them with an expression that made her chest ache. Longing mixed with resignation, hope mixed with fear. Everything she felt mirrored in his eyes. The Paris trip happened 2 weeks later. Fraser Lux had been invited to participate in Fashion Week, showcasing Judy's pieces alongside established designers. It was a massive opportunity, a sign that she'd truly made it in the industry. Ben had insisted on coming, framing it as security, but Judy knew it was more than that. They flew business class, Zara pressed to the window, exclaiming over every cloud. Ben sat beside Judy, their shoulders touching in the cramped seats, both of them acutely aware of every point of contact. Paris was a dream. Their hotel overlooked the Seine. Zara was enchanted by everything, her 3-year-old mind blown by cobblestone streets and pastry shops and the sheer oldness of it all. Ben carried her on his shoulders through the Louvre, both of them laughing at the serious paintings. Judy trailed behind with her camera, capturing moments that felt almost painfully perfect. The fashion show was a triumph. Judy's pieces were featured prominently, worn by models who moved like warriors down the runway. The audience response was electric. Buyers placed orders. Fashion editors requested interviews. Judy stood backstage afterward, champagne in hand, feeling like she'd finally stepped into the life she was supposed to have. Ben found her there, his eyes bright with pride. You did it. You actually did it. We did it, Judy corrected. I wouldn't be here without you. Without your belief in me. No. Ben's voice was firm. This is all you. Your talent. Your determination. Your strength. I just got to watch you become who you were always meant to be. They were standing too close. Judy could feel the warmth radiating from him, could smell his cologne mixed with the Paris air. The moment stretched, heavy with 3 years of unspoken feelings. Ben, Mama! Zara came running, grabbing Judy's hand. The lady said I can have more petit fours. Can I? Please? The moment broke. Ben stepped back, that careful distance restored. Judy smiled at her daughter. Just one more, baby. Then we need to go back to the hotel. That night, after Zara was asleep in the adjoining room, Judy and Ben stood on the balcony overlooking Paris. The Eiffel Tower glittered in the distance. The city hummed with life below them. It felt like a moment out of time, separate from their real lives back home. Can I ask you something? Judy's voice was barely audible over the city sounds. Always. Why did you never try to... Why did we never... She couldn't finish the sentence, couldn't put words to the thing that lived between them. Ben was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was raw with honesty. Because when I pulled you from that water, you looked like my wife, helpless and dying. And I realized I'd been given a second chance. Not to save her, she's gone forever. but to save you. And then I watched you survive, watched you fight for your life and Zara's life, watched you build an empire from nothing, and somewhere in there, I stopped seeing you as someone who needed saving and started seeing you as someone I couldn't imagine living without." He turned to face her, his eyes reflecting the city lights. "But you'd been destroyed by someone you loved, betrayed by someone who promised to protect you. And I couldn't. I couldn't risk doing that to you, risk becoming one more person who hurt you. So I stayed quiet, stayed safe. Because having you and Zara in my life as friends, as family, felt better than risking it all and losing you completely." Judy felt tears streaming down her face. "Ben, I know. I know it's cowardly. I know it's not fair to either of us. But Judy, you and Zara are everything to me. Losing you would break me in ways I don't think I could survive, so I'd rather have this, whatever this is, than risk having nothing at all." Judy reached for his hand, held it tight. "You wouldn't lose us. You couldn't lose us. Don't you see? We're already yours. We've been yours for years. I was just too scared to admit it." Ben's hand tightened on hers. "Judy, His phone rang. The spell broke again. Ben answered it, his face going serious. "Yes? When? Are you sure?" He looked at Judy, something dark crossing his expression. "We'll be on the next flight back." "What's wrong?" "That was my lawyer. Gianni filed for emergency custody of Zara. Claims you're an unfit mother because you're living with an unrelated man. There's a hearing scheduled for next week. We need to get home." All the warmth drained from Judy's body. "He's taking me to court?" "He's trying to, but he won't win. Judy, he abandoned you both. No judge will give him custody." But Judy was already thinking about court battles, about lawyers and judges and Gianni's face when he looked at her boutique, about the desperation she'd seen there, about how far he might go to force his way back into their lives. "We need to pack," she said, her voice hollow. "We need to get home and fight this." The flight back was tense and silent. Zara, the only one sleeping peacefully. Judy and Ben sat awake, hands clasped between them, neither speaking because what was there to say? The moment in Paris was gone, buried under the weight of incoming legal battles. But their hands stayed linked the entire flight. And when they landed, when reality crashed back in with all its complications and impossibilities, they still didn't let go, because some things once claimed can't be unclaimed. And whether they were ready to admit it or not, they'd claimed each other that night in Paris, made promises without words that would change everything going forward. The only question now was whether they'd have the courage to follow through, or whether fear would win again, the way it always had. Chapter 8. The Courthouse. The courtroom was smaller than Judy had expected, more intimate, which somehow made it worse. She sat at the defendant's table with her lawyer, a sharp woman named Diana, who'd built her career on defending mothers' rights. Ben sat in the gallery directly behind her, a silent pillar of support. Maya beside him. Zara was at preschool, mercifully unaware that her entire future was being decided by strangers. Gianni sat at the other table with his legal team, 3 lawyers in expensive suits. He looked terrible. Thinner than Judy remembered, shadows under his eyes like he hadn't slept in months. Good. She hoped he hadn't slept, hoped every night was torture. The judge entered, a woman in her 60s with steel grey hair and an expression that suggested she'd seen every dirty trick in the book. "Let's begin. Mr. Reed, you're petitioning for emergency custody of a child you've had no contact with for 3 years. Walk me through your reasoning." Gianni's lead lawyer stood, confident and polished. "Your Honor, my client was deceived. His mother provided false DNA evidence, suggesting the child wasn't his. The moment he discovered the truth, he attempted to establish a relationship with his daughter. However, Ms. Fraser has denied all contact, despite Mr. Reed's biological rights as the father. And the storm? The judge's voice was sharp. The part where he threw a 7-month pregnant woman out of his house during a severe weather event? My client was operating under false information, Your Honor. He believed he'd been betrayed. His actions, while regrettable, were the result of manipulation by his late mother. His actions nearly killed his wife and child. Diana stood, her voice cutting. Ms. Fraser was found unconscious in floodwaters. She gave birth prematurely. The baby spent weeks in the NICU. And in all that time, Mr. Reed never called the hospital, never checked on them, never once asked if they survived. Because he believed the child wasn't his. Belief doesn't absolve cruelty, Your Honor. Diana pulled out a folder of documents. Mr. Reed filed for divorce without ever speaking to his wife. He cited abandonment and infidelity, neither of which was true. He emptied their joint bank account, leaving Ms. Fraser destitute with a newborn. He changed the locks on their home. For 3 years he made no attempt at contact, paid no child support, showed no interest in his daughter's well-being. The judge reviewed the documents, her expression growing darker. Mr. Reed, why the sudden interest in custody now? Gianni stood, dismissing his lawyer's attempt to stop him. Your Honor, I made a terrible mistake. I believed my mother's lies and destroyed my family. I've spent every day since learning the truth trying to fix it. But Judy won't let me see my daughter, won't let me apologize, won't give me any chance at all to be a father. You had your chance to be a father 3 years ago. Judy's voice rang clear through the courtroom. You chose to throw it away, literally threw it into a storm and locked the door. I know what I did, and I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. Gianni's voice cracked. But I have rights. She's my daughter, my blood. Blood doesn't make you a father. Ben's voice came from the gallery, quiet but carrying weight. Showing up makes you a father. Being there when she's sick makes you a father. Reading bedtime stories and wiping tears and teaching her to be brave makes you a father, and you've done none of that. Who the hell are you to talk about my daughter? Gianni spun to face him. You're just some guy she's living with. You have no rights here. You're right, I have no legal rights. Ben stood, his presence filling the small courtroom. But I've earned everything else. I've been there for every nightmare, every fever, every milestone. I'm the one Zara calls when she's scared. I'm the one she trusts. And you're the biological accident who tried to kill her before she was born. Your Honor, Gianni's lawyer tried to regain control. This is exactly the inappropriate situation we're concerned about. Ms. Fraser is cohabitating with an unrelated male, exposing the child to a stable, loving home environment? The judge cut him off. Because that's what I'm seeing in these reports. Let me read you some highlights from the social worker's evaluation. She picked up another document. Quote, the child appears healthy, happy, and well-adjusted. She shows strong attachment to both mother and Mr. Oliver, whom she refers to as Uncle Ben. The home environment is stable, safe, and nurturing. The child demonstrates age-appropriate development and socialization. No concerns noted, end quote. She set down the document and fixed Gianni with a stare that could melt steel. Mr. Reed, let me be very clear. You don't get to abandon your family, ignore them for 3 years, and then suddenly demand custody when the mother becomes successful. That's not how this works. I'm not trying to take her away. I just want to meet her, to know her, to have some kind of relationship. Gianni's desperation was palpable. Please, Your Honor, I know I don't deserve it. I know I destroyed everything. But she's my daughter. Doesn't that mean anything? The judge was silent for a long moment, studying him. Finally, she spoke. Against my better judgment, I'm going to grant you one supervised visit. 1 hour with a court-appointed supervisor present at a neutral location. After that, the child gets to decide if she wants further contact. Thank you, Your Honor. I'm not finished. The judge's voice went hard. If you upset that child, if you cause her any distress, if you do anything that makes her uncomfortable, I will personally ensure you never see her again. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor. Thank you. Thank you so much. The judge turned to Judy. Ms. Fraser, I know this isn't what you want, but he does have biological rights, and courts prefer to keep parental relationships intact when possible. However, the child's well-being is paramount. If at any point you feel this arrangement is harmful, you come back to me immediately. Judy nodded, her throat too tight to speak. Outside the courthouse, Gianni tried to approach her. Ben stepped between them immediately, a wall of protection. Don't! I just want to talk to her. You heard the judge. One supervised visit. That's all you get. Ben's voice was ice cold. And if you do anything at all, to hurt that little girl, I don't care what the law says. You'll answer to me. Is that a threat? It's a promise. Ben didn't back down, didn't blink. Judy survived you once. Zara will survive you too. But you're going to have to survive knowing that you had everything and threw it away, and no court order can fix that. Gianni watched them walk away, Ben's hand on Judy's back, guiding her toward the car. He stood there in the courthouse parking lot, victory hollow in his mouth. He'd gotten his visitation, 1 hour with the daughter he'd never met. But watching Judy and Ben move together, watching the way she leaned into him, watching the unity they projected, Gianni knew the truth. He'd won the battle in court, but he'd lost the war 3 years ago when he locked that door, and no amount of legal maneuvering would ever change that simple, devastating fact. Chapter 9. 1 hour. The supervised visit was scheduled at a family counseling center, neutral territory with cheerful walls and toys scattered across a carpeted playroom. Gianni arrived early, pacing like a caged animal, practicing what he'd say, how he'd explain, wondering if a 3-year-old could possibly understand the word mistake and the weight it carried. The court-appointed supervisor, a kind-faced woman named Mrs. Patterson, watched him with professional sympathy. Mr. Reed, try to relax. Children can sense tension. Just be yourself. Be himself. The man who'd thrown away his family. Great advice. The door opened and Judy entered, holding Zara's hand. Ben was behind them, his presence a clear message. I'm here. I'm watching. I'm ready to intervene. Gianni's breath caught when he saw Zara properly for the first time. She was beautiful, dark curls like Judy's, but his eyes, his nose, his stubborn chin. She was wearing a yellow dress with butterflies on it, her hair in 2 neat ponytails. She looked at him with open curiosity, no recognition, no connection, just a stranger her mother had brought her to meet. Zara, this is... Judy's voice wavered. She'd rehearsed this. This is Gianni Reed. He's your biological father. What's biological? Zara asked, the question honest and innocent. It means he's the person whose DNA you share. Judy crouched down to Zara's level. But you don't have to call him Daddy or anything special. You can just call him Gianni if you want. Or Mr. Reed. Zara studied Gianni with the brutal honesty of a 3-year-old. Why are you crying? Gianni hadn't realized he was. He wiped his eyes quickly. Because I'm happy to meet you. I've wanted to meet you for a very long time. Mama says you made a very bad mistake. Zara's voice was matter-of-fact, just reporting the information she'd been given. Is that true? Judy winced. Ben's jaw tightened, but Gianni nodded. Yes, I made the worst mistake anyone could make. I hurt your mama when she needed me most, and I missed out on knowing you. Mama says we should forgive mistakes if people are really, really sorry. Zara tilted her head. Are you really, really sorry? More than I could ever explain. Okay. Zara accepted this with the simple logic of childhood. She sat down in the playroom and picked up a doll. Gianni sat nearby, careful not to crowd her. He'd brought gifts, expensive ones, but suddenly they felt hollow. A giant stuffed bear, a designer dress, books she probably couldn't read yet. Zara looked at them politely. "Thank you, those are very nice." But she didn't touch them, just kept playing with the dolls she'd already had, creating some elaborate story about a princess and a dragon. "Do you want to play together?" Gianni tried to inject warmth into his voice, tried to connect. "Okay." Zara handed him a toy dragon. "You can be the dragon who tries to steal the princess, but then Uncle Ben saves her. That's how the story goes." Uncle Ben? Of course. Maybe the dragon could be nice this time? Maybe he could apologize to the princess? Zara considered this seriously. But why did he try to steal her in the first place? Because he was confused. Someone lied to him and made him think the princess was bad, but she wasn't bad at all. She was good, and the dragon was too stupid to see the truth. That's sad. Zara's little face scrunched up with concern. The dragon should have asked the princess about it instead of just believing the lies. You're absolutely right. He should have. They played for a while, Zara directing the story, Gianni following her lead. But there was no warmth there, no connection. She was polite to him the way she'd be polite to any adult. A teacher, a store clerk, someone her mother told her to be nice to. Halfway through the hour, Zara got up and walked over to where Ben and Judy sat on the other side of the room. She climbed into Ben's lap without asking, curled against his chest like it was home. "Uncle Ben, I'm hungry." "We'll get lunch after this, Princess." Ben wrapped his arms around her naturally, the gesture so practiced, it was clearly their normal routine. Gianni watched his daughter nestle into another man's arms and felt his heart shatter all over again. That should be him. That comfort, that trust, that love. That should have been his. "Do you like him?" Zara asked Ben, loud enough for the whole room to hear. "The biological man?" "That's not really my business, sweetheart." Ben's answer was diplomatic. "Your mama says it's important for you to know where you came from. But we don't need him, right?" Zara's voice was small, worried. "We're okay with just us? You and Mama and me? We're more than okay." Ben kissed the top of her head. "We're perfect." Zara smiled, satisfied. She stayed in Ben's lap for the rest of the visit, occasionally glancing at Gianni, but showing no interest in returning to play with him. When Mrs. Patterson announced that time was up, Zara hopped down and went directly to Judy, grabbing her hand. "Can we go now?" "Yes, baby." Judy picked her up, balanced her on her hip. "Say goodbye to Mr. Reed." "Bye." Zara waved politely, already mentally moving on. "Thank you for the toys." "Zara, wait." Johnny's voice was desperate. "Can I see you again? Would you like that?" Zara looked at Judy. "Do I have to?" The question was a knife between Johnny's ribs. Judy looked at him with something that might have been pity. "No, baby, you don't have to do anything you don't want to do." "Then I don't want to." Zara's honesty was brutal. "I want to go have lunch with Mama and Uncle Ben. The biological man is nice, but I don't know him." Mrs. Patterson cleared her throat. "Miss Fraser, legally you're required to—" "The child has expressed her preference." Judy's voice was steel wrapped in velvet. "I'm not forcing my daughter to have a relationship she doesn't want. Mr. Reed is welcome to petition the court again when Zara is older and can make a more informed decision. But for now, she's 3 years old and she's choosing her family, which is me and Ben. That's her right." "Judy, please!" Johnny tried one more time. "You had your hour. You had your chance to make a first impression." And Zara decided. Judy's voice held no anger, no bitterness, just finality. "This is what you chose, Gianni, when you locked that door, when you filed for divorce, when you spent 3 years pretending we didn't exist. You chose this, and now you get to live with it." She carried Zara out, Ben following, his hand on Judy's back, protective, possessive, The family unit Gianni had destroyed, and they'd rebuilt without him. Through the window, Gianni watched them walk to Ben's truck, watched Ben strap Zara into her car seat while Judy kissed their daughter's forehead. Watched them pull away, the three of them together, complete, no missing pieces. Mrs. Patterson touched his shoulder gently. "I'm sorry, Mr. Reed. These things sometimes take time. Children need to build trust gradually." But Gianni knew the truth. There would be no gradually. There would be no building trust. Zara had chosen her family, and he wasn't in it. He was just the biological accident who'd almost killed her before she was born. He sat in his car for 2 hours after they left, staring at nothing. His lawyer called. He didn't answer. His assistant called about a meeting. He didn't answer. He just sat there, replaying the hour over and over, looking for the moment where he could have changed things, where he could have connected with his daughter. But there was no such moment, because the moment that mattered had happened 3 years ago in the rain, when he'd made his choice. And everything since then was just consequences playing out to their inevitable conclusion. That night, he drove past Oakmont Estate, saw lights on in the guest house. Through the windows, he could see the three of them. Ben was reading to Zara on the couch. Judy was in the kitchen cooking. Normal life. Family life. The life Gianni had wanted once, back before he'd destroyed everything. He drove home to his empty house, poured himself a drink, sat in the dark, and finally let himself acknowledge what he'd been avoiding since that courthouse hearing. He'd lost. Completely, utterly, irreversibly lost. Not just the court case, not just his daughter, but everything. His wife, his family, his chance at redemption. All gone, all destroyed by his own hands. And the worst part? They were happy without him, thriving without him. Better off without him in every measurable way. That hurt more than any punishment a court could impose. The knowledge that he was irrelevant, that the world he'd thrown away had rebuilt itself into something beautiful, and there was no place in it for him anymore. Some mistakes, he realized, you don't get to fix. Some bridges once burned stay burned forever. And some fathers are fathers only in biology, never in the ways that actually matter. Chapter 10. The Queen's Choice. Few months after the courthouse visit, Judy stood in her boutique's main office, reviewing designs for next season's collection, when her phone rang with an unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Unknown numbers were usually reporters wanting interviews, or vendors pitching services. But something made her pick up. "Ms. Fraser, this is Pacific Hills Medical Center. We have a Gianni Reed here who's listed you as emergency contact. He's been in an accident." Judy's stomach dropped. "What kind of accident?" "Single car collision. He's stable but requesting to see you. We found your name in his wallet notes." She should have said no. Should have hung up. Should have protected herself and Zara from any more contact with the man who'd tried to destroy them. But instead she heard herself say, "I'll be there in 20 minutes. Ben was at the boutique doing security checks. She found him in the warehouse. "Gianni's in the hospital, car accident. He's asking for me." Ben's expression went carefully neutral. "Do you want me to come with you?" "No. I need to do this alone. But can you pick up Zara from preschool? I don't know how long I'll be." "Of course." He touched her arm gently. "Judy, you don't have to go. You don't owe him anything." "I know. But I need to close this chapter properly. I need to look him in the eye and say what needs to be said. And then I need to walk away and never look back." The hospital smelled like antiseptic and fear. They directed her to Gianni's room on the 4th floor. He was sitting up in bed, arm in a sling, bandage on his forehead, but otherwise appeared unharmed. When he saw her, his eyes filled with tears. "You came. I didn't think you'd come." Judy stood in the doorway, not entering fully. "The hospital said it was serious. I thought you were dying." "Part of me wanted to die." His voice was hollow, but there was something different in it now, something honest. I wasn't paying attention, lost control of the car. Part of me just let it happen, didn't fight to stop it. But then survival instinct kicked in at the last second anyway. You gave up. It wasn't a question. I've been giving up for months, waking up every day knowing what I destroyed, seeing your face on billboards, knowing you're out there thriving and I have no part in it. He looked at her with eyes that held only exhausted truth. I need to tell you something. Something I should have told you 3 years ago. Judy waited, silent. I knew, Judy. Deep down, I knew my mother was lying. The words hung in the air like poison. What? That night when she showed me those papers, there was this moment, this split second where I looked at your face and I knew. I knew you were telling the truth. I knew my mother was manipulating me. She'd done it my whole life. Controlled every friend, every girlfriend, every choice. His voice shook. And you were the one thing I chose without her approval. The one person I loved, despite her objections. And she couldn't stand it. So you threw me away. Judy's voice was ice. I didn't have the courage to stand up to her. I'd spent my whole life doing what she wanted, taking the easy path, avoiding confrontation. And in that moment, it was easier to believe you were lying than to believe my mother was capable of that level of cruelty. He was crying now. I chose cowardice over courage. I chose comfort over truth. Not because I believed her, but because believing her meant I didn't have to fight. Judy walked fully into the room, closed the door. When she spoke, her voice was quiet, but carried the weight of 3 years of survival. You knew I was telling the truth and you threw me out anyway. Yes. You knew that baby was yours and you left us to die. Yes. Not because you were deceived, but because you were weak. Yes. Gianni's voice broke. I was weak. I've been weak my entire life, and you and Zara paid the price for my cowardice. Judy stood there, processing this confession, knowing that he'd doubted, that he'd sensed the truth and chosen to ignore it, that he'd sacrificed her to avoid confronting his mother. Somehow that was worse than if he'd been completely deceived. You want to know what you can do? She leaned against the wall. Sign papers, giving up all parental rights to Zara. Let Ben adopt her properly. Let our daughter have a father who actually shows up. You want me to give her up? Gianni looked devastated. You already gave her up, 3 years ago, when you chose the easy path over the right one. I'm just asking you to make it legal. Judy's voice was steel. She doesn't know you, doesn't want to know you, and I won't force a relationship that causes her confusion and pain. She's my daughter. No, she's Ben's daughter, in every way that matters. You're just a coward whose DNA she unfortunately shares. Judy moved toward the door, done with this conversation. But at the threshold she turned back. I forgive you, Gianni, not because you deserve it, but because holding on to anger about you was taking up space in my heart that belongs to better things. To Zara, to my business, to Ben, to the man who pulled me from the water and then stayed, the man who showed me what courage looks like. You love him. I do. I love him more than I ever loved you, because he's brave where you were cowardly. He's steady where you were weak. He chose me every single day without asking anything in return. Gianni closed his eyes. I hope he knows how lucky he is. He does, because unlike you, he doesn't take the people he loves for granted. She left then, walked out of that hospital room and didn't look back. Drove home to Oakmont Estate, to the guest house that had been her sanctuary. Ben's truck was in the driveway. Through the window she could see him and Zara making dinner together, both laughing, flower in Zara's hair. Judy sat in her car for a moment, watching them. Her family. The family she'd built from ashes and determination, and the quiet devotion of a man who'd saved her, and then never stopped. She went inside. Zara ran to her immediately. Mama, we're making pizza. Uncle Ben let me put on all the cheese. I can see that, baby. Judy kissed her daughter's flour-dusted head, then looked up to find Ben watching her with quiet concern. How is he? Ben asked carefully. Broken. Finally honest about his cowardice, but broken. Judy moved closer, close enough to feel his warmth. I told him to sign over his parental rights. Let you adopt Zara properly. Ben's eyes widened. Judy, are you sure? I've never been more sure. She reached up, touched his face. You're her father in every way that matters, and I want her to have your name. I want us to be official, a real family. Us? Ben's voice was careful, hopeful. Yes, us. Judy's smile was real, full. I love you, Ben Oliver. I've loved you for a long time. I was just too scared to say it. But I'm not scared anymore. And I love you. Ben's hands cupped her face, his touch gentle and reverent. I've loved you since the moment I pulled you from that water. You and Zara are my whole world. They kissed then, finally, after 3 years of careful distance. Kissed like people who'd earned the right to love each other, who'd survived hell and found each other in the aftermath. You, Mama and Uncle Ben are kissing? Zara's voice broke the moment. Does this mean Uncle Ben can be my real daddy now? Judy laughed, Ben laughed, and they pulled Zara into a hug between them. Yes, baby, if you want him to be. I want. Zara threw her arms around both of them. Can I call you Daddy instead of Uncle Ben? You can call me whatever you want, Princess. Ben's voice was thick with emotion. I'd be honored. That night, after Zara was asleep, Ben pulled out a ring. Simple, beautiful, honest. I bought this a year ago. Been carrying it around, too scared to use it, but if you're ready, I'm asking. He opened the box. Judy Fraser, will you marry me? Judy looked at the ring, at Ben's hopeful face, at the life they'd built together. Yes. He slipped the ring on her finger and kissed her again, slower, deeper, full of promise. 6 months later, they married in the backyard. Zara was flower girl, throwing petals everywhere, and in a courthouse across town, papers were filed terminating Gianni Reed's rights and granting adoption to Ben Oliver. Zara Fraser became Zara Oliver, Judy Fraser became Judy Oliver, and the guest house became their first home as a married family. Fraser Lux continued to grow. They raised Zara and later 2 more children. They built a life full of love and the kind of happiness that comes from surviving hell and choosing to build heaven anyway. And Gianni Reed, he signed the papers, disappeared from their lives. The last Judy heard, through Maya, he'd moved across the country and started volunteering at a men's shelter, teaching classes on recognizing manipulation, helping other men learn to stand up to toxic family dynamics. It wasn't redemption. Nothing could fix what he'd broken, but it was growth. The slow process of learning courage when he'd spent a lifetime choosing comfort. But that was his story now, his journey. Judy's story was here, with Ben, with Zara, with the empire she'd built and the family she'd chosen. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Ben surprised her with a private exhibition. Every piece she'd ever created displayed like art. The centerpiece was that first rough necklace, the broken chain reformed into a crown. Gianni had mailed it back years ago with a note. You were always a queen. I was just too blind to see it, and too much of a coward to stand beside you. She'd kept it, not as a reminder of pain, but as proof of transformation. At the exhibition, surrounded by friends and family and the life she'd built, Judy stood with Ben's arm around her waist and Zara holding her hand. Their 2 younger children, Miles and Sophia, ran through the gallery with chaotic energy. You did it, Ben whispered. You took a storm and turned it into an empire. Judy looked around at everything she'd built. We did it. You gave me the courage to survive, and then you gave me the courage to thrive. No. Ben turned her to face him. I gave you safety. You gave yourself everything else. You're the bravest person I know." And somewhere across the country, Johnny Reed lived with his choices, with the knowledge that he'd held heaven and thrown it into a storm, with the emptiness of knowing his daughter called another man daddy and was better off for it. But he also lived with something else, the slow, painful process of learning courage, of standing up to manipulation, of helping others find strength when he'd lost his own for so long. It wasn't redemption, but it was growth. The small, daily choice to be less of a coward than he'd been the day before. And maybe that was enough. Not enough to fix the past, but enough to make the future slightly less terrible. But that was his story, his responsibility. Judy's story was here, in this gallery, with this family, with this man who'd been brave enough to save her and brave enough to love her. She was a queen, not because of what had been done to her, but because of what she'd done with it. Because she'd refused to stay broken, because she'd chosen to rise. And queens don't look back at the ashes. They're too busy building kingdoms.